Hey, what's good everybody? My name's Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Today I have a rare reaction video over Prodlib's Give Me 4 Minutes and I'll Get You Ahead of 99% Producers that I watched earlier today, and I wanted to communicate some thoughts based off of it. I want to make it very clear that I'm not out to be disrespectful or to project any kind of hate or animosity towards anybody. This is more so in the means of constructive criticism and elaboration over what's going on. Please, by the way, I'm not going to say anything bad about this person or have anything like particularly negative, but more so of a means of dissent over some of the approaches of what this person has to say, and just talk about how it relates to the bigger side of producer culture on YouTube. Yeah. Please don't, if you resonate with the things that I say, please don't go and say bad things about this person or anything else of the sort. This is primarily a means to give you a higher level of consciousness and means of learning and cultivation when it comes into how to actually improve. So with that being said, let's go ahead and listen to what they have to say, and then I'll talk more about it as he starts to give us some of those tips.
Here's how you can get ahead of 99% of music producers and level up your beats insanely fast. This is the exact blueprint that will get you closer to your bigger goals in music. Now, I'm a full-time music producer, and my mission with this channel is pretty simple: to help you become the best version of yourself as a music producer. I've been in the game for over 8 years now, and I see producers making the same mistakes over and over again. And if you're watching this video, chances are you're probably making these mistakes too. So stick around. I'm going to give you a guaranteed system that you can follow right now to see crazy progress in your beats. Now, before I do show you the blueprint, first of all, you got to understand the biggest mistake producers make.
All right, so I understand the framing of the video. I understand that he's playing the YouTube game, but when it comes into stuff like this, I do wish that the YouTube community, myself included, I try not to, would just show the answer, just give the thing, and then talk about it. I'm here to learn, and something that is a difficult game of YouTube to play is, do you want to be entertained or do you want to learn stuff, or do you want it to be a little bit of a mix of both? But a lot of this was a lot of big promises, and a lot of putting himself on the platform and all of that other stuff, which I understand, people need a reason to explain why they should be listened to. But at the same time, you know what I mean? It's let the music speak for you. And that's always been my biggest thing, is let the music speak for you and then talk about it. I don't need the imagery. I also don't like that, the pillars and stuff were blurred out. That's just a personal thing, but yeah.
Let me show you this beautiful photo of a young strapping fella right
Pay
here.
attention to this
That's
because
me,
this is
14
important.
years old, super skinny, baller, wanted to play basketball. Back then, I wanted to see how far I could go as a basketball player. I was working on my skills every day, but the problem was I was playing against grown men. They were twice my size, and yeah, I was just getting bullied on the court. So I figured I needed to get stronger. I joined a gym, I'd go in.
I wish that he would have elaborated more on this point, because it sounded like he was going in one direction and then just was like, I need to get stronger. In terms of this, the mindset that I have, because I went from basketball to martial arts and to all different other kinds of things, but whenever you're training and you're trying to improve, don't just pit yourself against impossible odds. Don't try to be a David versus Goliath. We always say you want to train against someone who's bigger, faster, stronger than you, give them +1, because you can always move to a +1. You know what I mean? It's an attainable goal of that you can improve on every day. But if it's like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and make music like Noisia, like, it's not going to happen. And so when you are setting up these goals, which I think he had a really strong start with this, I just wish he would have said something like this, is that when you're trying to improve, don't look at trying to make leaps and bounds of progress. Look on the small, consistent, you know what I mean, steps that you can actually, extend your legs to, you know.
For a couple hours, come home, eat whatever I wanted, and then just repeat the process. At first, I did make some progress. I was literally going from doing nothing to lifting some weight, so there's going to be some progress there. But pretty quickly, I hit a wall. It did not matter how often I went, I just wasn't getting any better. And this right here is what I see so many producers doing. They'll decide to take music seriously, they'll buy all the gear, and then they'll just start making random beats every day. And at first,
okay, so this is really important. I don't think that you should buy stuff. 100% agree with that. I do think that if you have the time, you should make beats every day. And there's the sentiment that he has with this that he's going to explain further, and as he does that, I'll talk about my rebuttal against that. But I will say that if you have the money to spend on gear, buy lessons instead. You know, it could be him. Prodlib, you could, I think that they have a link to one-on-one lessons and stuff. I do as well, but find someone that you really dig on SoundCloud and just give them a shout, send them a message and be like, hey, do you offer lessons, you know, or one-on-one lessons? I really like this about your music. And write down all of your questions and use that as a jump off point, because all of these things are going to make so much more sense if you have a coach, if you have somebody to help you out, to guide you on the advice that is coming. And I wish that he would have said that, because the fact that he didn't is where I have a lot of disagreements with, if that makes sense. So yeah, don't spend money on gear. Spend money on education.
There's progress there. They start seeing some progress in their production skills, but pretty quickly that starts to plateau. They kind of run out of ideas and things just kind of stagnate. And they can't figure out why. And honestly, 99% of the producers that apply for my mentorship program, they all come at me with the same problem. Now, going back to my basketball journey, it took me a few years to realize why I wasn't improving in the gym. Just showing up to the gym wasn't enough. I had to think about it. I had to train specific muscles, leg day, chest day, back day. I had to eat the right food and track my protein, carbs, fat, make sure I was eating enough.
I agree. Um, However, there's a couple of things that need to be considered when you're talking about specific goal attaining versus developing yourself as an artist. One thing that I will say, and again, I don't think that this is a bad thing by any means, but it's the comparison to basketball to something artistic is a little bit unfair, because basketball and sports is solely based off of results. And the problem with that is that when you come into music or you come into expression and all of that other stuff, you need to ask yourself, what am I trying to get out of music? And I think that I would be the first to advocate cultivating the artist first before trying to go for, I'm going to be a professional artist. I'm going to be, whatever. Like, every artist that I know will sit down and doodle and sit down and, just fiddle around for 20, 30 minutes as a creative warm up. And you need to give yourself that space to have aimless creation. I think it's important not to dwell on it, but it is important to give yourself permission in order to do that, even if it is a little bit every day. I know where he's going with this, and to an extent, I do agree with the cultivation part, but please don't give that up. I would much rather you spend 10 minutes every day doing something that is, dumb beat creation, whatever, than I'm going to spend a week or I'm going to spend 3 days just trying to improve my beat making skills. You get what I'm saying? That's going to be the big theme about what I'm going to get into when he goes into the other stuff.
Gain the weight I needed to get stronger. And once I had that structured plan, the progress went crazy. I went from doing this to doing something more like this. And that's exactly how you should approach music production. Essentially, you need a workout plan for your beats.
I
So
do
here's the
agree
step-by-step system I
to an
walk all the
extent.
producers through on my mentorship program. It's simple and it works. So you want to think of your production skills like building blocks. If the blocks underneath aren't solid, then the whole thing's going to collapse. So essentially, your goal should be to build each of these blocks as strong as possible before moving on to the next.
That's
First things
valid.
first, start with your drums and your bounce, get the swing right. Focus all your efforts on picking high quality sounds, getting your bounce and swing right, and balancing the mix of your drums. So if
Okay. So, first off, there's a lot of things that I want to say about this. Um, I think that from a general structure, right? I think that what he's getting ready to talk about holds merit. I would have a different order, but the main thing that I have with this is that those might be goals, but the thing is that even if you practice every day, you're not necessarily going to get better at that. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? It's like, it's very generic advice that's like, oh, get your beats right. How? How am I supposed to do that? What I personally would have said was, don't start with drums and rhythm. Start with studying arrangement and composition as a means of identify the most basic parts of what a track is. What is the intro? What is the main section? What is the outro? What is the bridge? What is all of that? That is going to be something that will at least help you identify how to work on a specific section, right? Because if you just throw drums or whatever, you don't know where you are in the track. even if it's a loop, whatever, like it's that's the number one thing is you need to understand what is a beginning, a middle, and an end of a piece that you're trying to create in the first place. When we talk about rhythm, he talks about drums and rhythm and all of that. And I think that it is okay to give generic advice on understanding what that is as a means of vocabulary. At the same time, um, the way that you cultivate it, the way that I would cultivate it now, if I could go back, is yes, in a sense, what he's going to say of try to, study some of your favorite tracks and whatever up to a point. But the problem with that advice is like when you get into studying some of the stuff that like I make, whatever, like how are you going to break this down and try to copy this? Can you identify all the drum hits that were within that? There's too much. Instead, what I would do is I would start simple and I would look at going on to some loops and going on to maybe Splice or something because most people like go on Splice and do all that stuff. Pull out some drums that have a groove that you like, and then that is going to be way easier to try to recreate on your own. But that is should only be the very, very, very beginning of your cultivation because from the get-go, you need to start practicing. It's called audiating, coming up with your own imagination for rhythms, for melodies, for basses, for all of that stuff. And the things that he talks about in here are high quality sounds, this and that, whatever, like all of that. No, you need to figure out how to put something together. You know, when you first learn to draw, can you make a box? Can you draw a house? If you can't even draw a house, but you have the nicest pen that there's only one of a kind of whatever, like you, it's not going to matter. So you need to understand how this system works and a means of what goes into making a beat. That is the anatomy of what is this, right? It's not just drums and rhythm. It's not just melodies and all of that other stuff. It's very mechanical things that, how do I say it goes so much deeper in the sense that you need to understand like how to count 2, 3, 4, understanding time signatures. These are things that are basic theory, but they'll help you so much as opposed to, why doesn't this loop fit within this time? You know what I'm saying? Oh, the tempo. Oh, I didn't know what tempo was. And that's the problem with this is that there's so many things that a new producer doesn't know that they don't know. And one of the faults of a lot of producers, myself included, depending on who their audience is geared towards, tries to cover this much. B, it's so easy to talk about things that we gloss over terminology that we expect other people to know. And if you really want to break something down and you want to teach somebody, like you have to be more granular than that. So that way they're caught up when you start throwing these things around. Um, sorry, I'll let him continue. But the other thing that is not included in this is understanding structure. And the second thing that I think is actually the most important, especially if you're a hip hop person, is sampling, because that is going to take care of half of what these other pillars are. Actually, 75% of what these other pillars are. If you understand beat structure, you understand composition, then by sampling, you can take care of the melodies. You can take care of, he goes into arrangement. To me, arrangement is the bottom, like the composition. It can take care of your grooves, it can take care of your basses, and it can take care of your mixing because all you have to do is put them together. You know what I'm saying? I'll let him continue. Sorry.
Good to the ear. And here's a little cheat code. Just go and recreate the drums from the songs or the beats that you really love. And then just keep putting the reps in until your drums are sounding clean, unique, they hit hard or...
Yeah, like putting the reps in, if you put it in reps to where you do something every day and it's the exact same without any intention, like I know that I just gave you the doodling thing, but if you're trying to get better but you just do that, it's not going to make you any better. Like you need to have more stimulus. You need to have something in mind in which to cultivate, you know? So my advice to you is instead of trying to copy and just keep going until it's sounding the way that you want it to, you might not ever fucking get there. You know what I mean? So you need to come up with, I'm going to spend a week making, just drums. I do agree with that part. You spend a week, 2 weeks making drums, but then you need to go back and you need to write down, what do I like? What do I not like? And if you do that, and then you go back into the lessons, like what I'm talking about, then you're going to be like, yo, here's 10-second beats that I made. And this is the goal that I have with a song that you made. How do I make it sound more like what you're making? And I'll do you one more. If you go even deeper than that, whenever you're trying to come up with music, like people copy because that is the most primal, or I would say the most primitive, the most basic form of how we learn. But the issue with it is that when you copy, it's also the fastest track to get into imposter syndrome, and it inhibits you from coming up with your own ideas. The idea is if they come in from within first and you fast track on how to get those ideas out, you don't care about the sounds, you don't care about everything else. You care about, man, I want to make a beat today and I want it to be like boom, ka, boom, boom, ka. Well, record that and figure out how to make that fit within a bar, and then go back and come up with your own beats and copy that, because now you're connecting the brain to the actual physical medium. Does that make sense? And the other issue that this runs into is when you get into copying and all that other stuff, what do? I'm going to go on YouTube and type in how to sound like Skrillex, how to sound like Metro Boomin, whatever you're into. I don't really care. But you get all these people that are trying to imitate these things, but like it that is like, to me, the aspect of culture that I do not like, or maybe I'll say I like the least about the producer community. How to sound like this person, how to sound like this person. And I get it. People do it because one, it gets views. Two, because they're really enthusiastic and really passionate about, being a fan of that person's music. But what does it do for the community? And what kind of expectations are you setting up that are often subverted because you can't deliver? You can't, unless if it's super specific or like super basic, you can't sound like those people, and you shouldn't try to sound like those people. And so the big picture of the advice that I have for you, two things, sorry, but there's a reason why I'm doing a reaction to this video, is A, try to focus on and be aware of what is this, like, what does this person, what is it that makes this person make, shit, how do I say this? What is it about this person's music that makes you feel a certain way? And then how can you recreate that feeling within your own music? That's the best way and most concise way that I can say that. And for an academic term, or from a studious point of view, how, like, what are the concepts that this person is teaching? And rather than looking at the synth, or can I recreate this sound or whatever, what is the general formula or the general approach, and how can I apply that with my own keyword exploration? That is how you get benefit out of videos like this. Because even then, he mentions a blueprint at the beginning of the video. Sorry, I paused on you closing your eyes with a face like that. I didn't mean to.
As soft as you
There we go. But those are going to be things that are going to take you way further than I'm just going to copy it until I get it right, because sometimes it's never going to happen.
to, and just get to a point where you're really confident. Do this, honestly, your beats will sound way better, way faster. And then once your drums are solid, then move on to melodies. Work on chords, top melodies, leads, basses, pull inspiration from songs you actually love, study how they're crafted, how they built them. Just ask yourself, how many instruments are layered in this particular track? What
Again, this is flawed logic, because it's like, you just listen to my track, I can play something else for you very quickly, something that is even a little bit more basic. Like, if you're just listening to hip hop and it's got one of everything, sure. But sometimes when it comes into breaking down complicated music, like, it's not so straightforward to be able to identify that stuff and be like, oh, I'm just going to do this, I'm just going to do that. And that's the issue with some videos like this, is that, you know what I mean? You can't assume that everybody's just trying to make trap music, even if that is your demographic, because people like me that have a lot of experience watch this kind of stuff, and I'm like, listen, man, like, it's and even if even if you can break that stuff down, it's the application of it. It's not how and what, but rather why. That is the question that you should be asking. Why did they choose that? Why did they choose to put a thing right there? And how does that make you feel? Those are going to be things of, that's the kind of inspiration that you should be looking for. Because if you're just looking for the mechanical, rudimentary hows and whats, then it doesn't really give you a lot of context in how you can apply it to your own stuff. It's just knowing that that exists in their track. It doesn't give you any sort of idea of context. Sorry.
instruments allowed this track to sound the way it does. Spend a few weeks making only melodic loops, and then once your melodies sound like the ones in your favorite tracks or pretty close to it, then you can move on. Now we can work on arrangement, taking your 8-bar loop into a fully fledged complete beat. Again, study how your favorite tracks are structured. When do the drums drop? When does the hook come in? How many
I would do
instruments
this
are playing
first.
during the verses? Apply those techniques and those ideas to your own beats until your arrangements feel natural and exciting. Again, spend some weeks solely doing that, and then finally you can move on to mixing. Learn how to level your beats properly, use effect plugins tastefully.
Yeah, I do agree that mixing should be the last of your priorities, but I also think that if you have good sounds, it makes mixing easier, which goes into all of those things. But if I want to go back to this pyramid, if I could do this myself, the number one thing right here would be compositional fundamentals. And some of that would include a little bit of theory because understanding patterns and all of that other stuff of like 8-bar loops, time signatures, keys of a track. Some songs don't have musicality to them. Some of it is just pure rhythm or texture, right? Understanding that would be the most fundamental thing. And if you look back to, the very first creation of music, what was it? It was just texture and drums and singing, I guess maybe melody was in there, but it wasn't so defined. Chants, all of that stuff. Then I would go into rhythm. I would understand the idea of what creates a rhythm, what creates patterning, all of that other stuff. Then on top of that, I would go into melody creation. And then probably above that, I would go into call and response. And actually, that would be in the same position, but I forget. But I think that the second pillar would be sampling and resampling because that is going to take care of almost all of these other issues that are going to be on top of that. If you understand composition, you understand sampling, that is your cheat sheet. That is your shortcut. That is why Splice exists, because they capitalize on it. They say, here is pre-made components of music that you can throw together. And it's a trap, but at the same time, if it's used in the right hands and you use it as a building block, as a learning tool, as opposed to I'm going to try to release, on Beatport and Tor or whatever, can be super helpful. It's just not advertised like that. But I really wish people would stop saying make pro music, because that's just not a freaking thing. It's a false promise. You need to be thinking about, how do I make better music that I am going to enjoy more, or how do I improve myself as an artist, or how do I make the music that I have always that represents me in my truest form. That would probably be the number one thing. So sorry. Composition, rhythm, sampling, call and response, sound design, mixing. That would probably be where I would go. I did sound design first before anything, and I wouldn't recommend it. But if you're into sound design, that's what we do here. I pretty much have a video on anything that you want to know, assuming that it's not categorized or not attributed to an artist. But in any case, let's let him finish.
Complete beat. Again, study how your favorite tracks are structured. When do the drums drop? When does the hook come in? How many instruments are playing during the verses? Apply those techniques and those ideas to your own beats until your arrangements feel natural and exciting. Again, spend
One thing that I will say is, he says apply those techniques. And in order for you to be able to even apply a technique, you need to know what the technique is. And that's one thing that I keep getting stuck on or keep getting hung up on. But that's why I say go back and practice the other things first, because if you have the vocabulary, you're going to be able to notice those techniques and you're going to be able to pick them up and do some kind of quote unquote imitation of them.
weeks solely doing that, and then finally you can move on to mixing. Learn how to level your beats properly, use effect plugins tastefully,
I don't even
and just get
sidechain
direction to
anymore,
learn
dude.
how
It's
to
just like,
make your beats sound loud, clean, and polished. Each of these building blocks right here are
here you go. If you want to get better at mixing, phase, EQ. If you want stuff loud, saturation, clipping, limiting. Go watch videos on those.
own skill. You don't just get good at producing, you get good at drums, you get good at melodies, mixing, arrangement, then you stack all of those things together. And here's a secret: spend 2 to 3 weeks focusing on one skill at a time, then move on to the next. Focused repetition trumps just random practice every single time. You'll
I do
stop
agree with
wasting
that.
time, and every session will actually move you forward. And here's where the magic happens: once you've trained each of these blocks individually, then you can start combining them. That's where everything clicks, your workflow feels smooth, your
Okay, and so this is another part that I feel like is glossed over, because just because you practice certain components, it doesn't necessarily make you better at making music. There is an art, there is an actual application and things with putting everything together. And I would say that you might even want to consider making a second pyramid to that. But if I am really good at dribbling, I'm good at shooting a basketball, I'm good at passing, and I go and play basketball, that doesn't make me good at all of the, it doesn't make me a better basketball player. It makes me really good at one specific thing. And so you need to pit challenges with yourself and create a second pillar of understanding how to practice building relationships with those elements. And so whenever we talk about martial arts and stuff, something that my instructor said is that it's not complicated. It's just two simple things put together. But you still have to practice the bonding, the synergy between making those elements work together in order for that to actually start to make sense, right? You don't just combine it. It doesn't just work. It's not like cooking where like you just throw stuff together and then you're like, pff, it's like Tears of the Kingdom, where like a magical thing poofs. There's an approach. There's an experimental stage. There is a trial and error aspect to it that you actually need to cultivate as a skill in itself. And again, I'm not saying that this person is saying anything wrong perhaps, but more so just as a means of there's more to it. And you have to take the plunge with, if you really want to become like an incredible beat maker or something like that, you're going to have to realize that you need to wear a lot of hats. You also should take a little bit of solace in knowing that if you already have good musical awareness, musical feel, intention, whatever, then a lot of times these answers are going to unfold for you. But if you know nothing about music, you know what I mean? You come straight from the South and you're a white person with no rhythm, just, stereotype, whatever. It's not going to be that easy. There's a lot more that you have to do. And I would say focus on, really trying to break out those pieces of how to put that together in order to, have a larger awareness of how everything, merges.
Sound pro, and you're not guessing anymore. When I make a beat now, I'm not hoping it's going to sound good. I kind of know it will. Not
Okay, maybe that's you, but as prolific as the music that some people would say that I've written in my lifetime, I still wake up and make fucking garbage. And you need to understand that's going to be a thing. And you need to give yourself permission. It's not, oh, it's going to work every time, whatever. I don't care who you fucking are. The best people that I know in this industry, which you may or may not know, they tell me the exact same thing is they make a bunch of garbage. And you know what I mean? It's like 1 out of 10 or sometimes 3 out of 10 on a good, session or whatever within a couple of months. Maybe it's 5 out of 10, whatever, but you're still going to make shit. It's going to happen. I'm going to say that one more time. You are going to make shit. The good news is that it's okay. Take what you can from those projects. Don't just abandon them if possible. Try to finish everything that you make. That is a really good one. Try to finish every project, but not as a means of every project going to be your masterpiece, as in a means of, I really fucking hate this, so I'm going to speed run, getting the arrangement down, and then at least that track has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But if you're stuck in the 8-bar loop, it's because you're apprehensive to move forward, right? You're like, I don't know what to do next. And so that's that point that you have to recognize that needs to be practiced. And maybe you can spend a week, instead, where we go into that second part of, man, I can't get past the 8-bar loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up every, 5 old projects and I'm just going to duplicate, I'm going to variate, and then I'm going to throw something in the beginning and the end to just, make a makeshift intro. Those things that make you uncomfortable are major, major stepping points into your improvement. Keep that in mind.
cocky because I've trained every muscle in my workflow. Now, one of the biggest areas producers tend to struggle with is melodies. That's where we end up spending a lot of time with the producers I work with. So if that's you as well, watch this video next. I break down a super simple sandwich formula that
Okay, so this is getting into a different topic, and I will touch on this briefly. You probably should go check this melody or check out this video out if you like what this person is saying. And I don't want to discount the things that this person has talked about. I just think that there's so much more as someone who is really about music production and stuff and thinks deeply about these things that I think are important for how to shape your perspective. And if you were able to sit through this video and, soak up everything that I said, I really appreciate it because I know that there was a lot of this. But I think that the things that I mentioned are pretty important, especially when it comes into just how to think about this stuff, how to approach it, you know, how to actually get better at making music, how to become the difference between good and great, right? Because that's usually this big. With that being said, check the video out, subscribe to ProdLib. You can subscribe to me if you like the stuff that I do. Check out alchemy.com if you want to support the channel. But again, I want to make it very clear that there's no disrespect towards ProdLib or anything of the sort. I only do videos of things that I really want to discuss, not things of me just trying to bash somebody. And I really want to make a point to say, please do not go to this person's channel and disrespect them for any reason whatsoever. Learn what you can, because there were some things that you could pull, that I could even pull from, that are good reminders. So thanks everybody. Please like the video. Let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are on this approach. And I know that this video was 4 minutes and I turned it into a 30-minute video, but I had a lot to say. So thanks everybody. I'll catch you in the next one.